Welcome to Bonehead. Today's topic, gentlemen, is
90's cartoons.
So, for you all listening or watching, we post things on the Facebooks and the Tweeters and whatnot, and we don't get a lot of response. And also, 2 of you dropped us on YouTube, and I really want to reach out to you and say,
We're going to find you.
What gives? So that means the rest of you that have kept us needs to find 5 more to replace those 2.
Because we're bad at math. And
Absolutely.
we know we're going to keep losing people. So
But
we gotta
it never
flood
fails. If, for example, remember when we posted 80's cartoons? It's like, what's your favorites?
Yeah.
All the way down, list after list after list. As a whim, I thought, I know we're going to do this show. I know it's coming this week, but let's post and see what people say. It's not going to change what you 2 pick.
Yeah, no, it's not. Even though, I will say what people posted.
About 80%'s on this list.
They're going to be pleased. Yeah.
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 There they just kept going.
Yeah.
So, here's my suggestion to the 2 of you. I've already told Chad, James, I want you to know it as well. Drop me. Get rid of me. Okay. I'm done. I'm burnt out. This is over.
Okay.
Start your own cartoon podcast and be done with it. This is your way to success. Either podcast about cartoons, serial killer, true crime. This is the only way for you 2 to get out.
There's no future for me.
There's no future.
I mean, and just to say this out loud, the only way we monetize, for those that don't know, the only way we monetize on YouTube is to have 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
We've got the time views.
We more than have the time views. The rest of the stuff, it's just really subscribers.
Yeah. If we don't have subscribers, we never monetize. Getting over 100 got us a certain credential, but we do not monetize. In other words, we don't get any of that sweet ad revenue.
And
that
we're
YouTube
talking
does.
30 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very little money.
Yeah. And so
Didn't mean to get off a topic.
Yeah.
I just quick.
No. We need a hero to save us. See, it all ties in.
And by the way, SoundCloud is our number 1 thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to be on Google Play, just to let you know.
So anyway, 90's...
You 2 need to do a cartoon podcast.
Well, and we've been promising 90's cartoons for a while, and it's been a slow build, and...
I say you burn me out.
Yeah.
I say, just go ahead. Bullet in the brain pan, squish.
That's a Serenity reference for those.
If they don't get it, they should stop listening or watching.
Yeah.
No.
What are you doing?
No, we can't do that.
It's
What?
okay. I'm going down in flames. You guys can watch your 2 Hold on. Why don't you gentlemen come back to the 3-dimensional world? Who am I?
Not who you are. Satan himself.
I'm funny.
Hey, you want to get sued by Satan?
I'm not that mean, says Satan. So 90's cartoons.
Libel.
So should we just talk about this? That
It's a popular topic.
And I talked to Joe, and this was before the Facebook post. Out of my head alone, I have pulled over 70 cartoons.
It's a lot.
Out of my head, no research, no nothing. I just compiled a list.
Do you
think? And with the exception of one, which I will say this, I knew what the cartoon was. I had to look it up to find the title. So I don't know if that's necessarily cheating.
That's not cheating.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of it.
You were out of the area code.
Yeah.
Do you think? It just slipped in. It just slipped.
Yeah.
He tripped. He fell.
He tripped.
Landed
he fell. There he was, and you landed on him.
But
do you think?
Dare not speak its name.
I was saying about this. Is the 90's? Because as I was saying about cartoons, and we had a little conversation earlier that when we did the 80's, we were able to do male and female.
Yeah.
Cartoons because it was all marketing.
Yeah.
Is 90's the second age or the real age of cartoons just being cartoons?
Well, yeah,
Chad and I were talking about this before you got here. There was no way of splitting it up that way.
Yeah, and let me start with this. In the 90's, animation reached a high that had never been seen prior, in my opinion. Before the decades, most animation was poorly produced and was used as a cheap tie-in to toy lines and various other products. Most of the stories were repetitive, poorly conceived, and very immature to say the least.
You mean that Weather Dominator wouldn't have ended up in 3 different parts of the world?
I love G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
But Slackjaw McGraw is what I was going to say. That makes no sense.
No.
Was that one of the Joes?
No.
I want to do it. Hold on. We need a country bumpkin that can infiltrate Cobra's new farming enterprise.
Oh, you sons of bitches. I'm Slackjaw McGraw. I could do the voice.
Oh, my God. We just sold.
I just got to do it like this. I'm Slackjaw McGraw. Where's my dip?
Now what?
It's hosted by Skull. It's like when the Flintstones did
G.I. Skull.
It's like when the Flintstones did Winston. Winston was Fred Barney was smoking away with Winston.
Now, what did we see in the 90s? The 90s saw an animation as a way to tell a compelling story, which could also be told
with Ninja Turtles.
Which could also be told over. That's actually the 80s.
I know.
Which could be told over several episodes. Creators did not write down to the audience and made the product they were putting out on air more important than the merchandise tied to their creations.
That's a dumbass idea.
Yeah, and this the 90s animation high was in large part to three things: the Saturday morning cartoon boom, Nickelodeon, and the Cartoon Network.
Can I talk about the Saturday morning cartoon as soon as you're done?
Yeah, sure. Now creating a list, as with James, list for me was as we do in all of our episodes prior to this, and this is that we're doing a different way of presenting this time. Creating just a list of three was too difficult for me to because I have a strong connection with animation in this era since my teenage years were very crappy. This was a way for me.
You were knee deep in it, buddy.
Oh yeah, right.
Knee deep.
That
Dispression.
Yeah.
Like Jaw McGraw.
Personal note for me: Saturday mornings was really special to me because usually it was my brothers who got to pick the movie rentals for the weekend, and I was always knowing that I was going to get a Billy Blanks or Don the Dragon Wilson.
So you
American
had the best
Ninja
childhood ever.
Crap fest that night. So Saturday mornings was my escape into an alternate dimension, whatever you want to call it, alternate reality. I don't know what the hell I'm saying.
You went into the Crystal Skull.
Yeah. FYI, Chip and Dale, Rescue Rangers, and DuckTales were all mentioned, but we're not going to really talk about those because they were produced in 1987 and 1988 respectively. Another sad note is that I did not do research on Beetlejuice the animated series because it was released in 1989.
Yeah, that's not 90.
That's not 90s. However, this is a personal favorite of mine, and I at least wanted to get the chance to mention it in this episode. Also, I'm not going to mention the New Kids on the Block animated series because I have principles.
And you'll let them go as soon as their schools pay the penalty.
Are you done with your intro?
Well, hold on. Let me. For this part,
what were you saying, James?
I'm James Thomas in this up.
Hold on, let me be Craig.
And what we're gonna do.
I can't help but notice you've got a steak up hanging out.
All I can say, gentlemen.
Be Craig.
All I can say, gentlemen, is I'm going to get really wordy in this episode. I am getting really wordy in this episode.
No shit.
And for the most part, and this is how we're going to do this. We're going to split this up into 4 categories of cartoons.
2 episodes.
2 episodes.
This is episode 1.
Other episodes to follow.
Be better than the other episode 1.
Yes. You talking about Star Wars?
Yes.
Okay.
There was only one episode 1.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
You say episode 1, what do people think?
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
You're right.
They think Jar Jar and the Gungans should burn in hell forever and an eternity.
So we're gonna discuss this through 4 categories. However, there is an exception. I could not figure out a category for Pirates of Darkwater and Peter Pan and the Pirates. But I wanted to mention them because they are excellent cartoons.
Pirates of Darkwater it was an adventure cartoon.
Yeah.
But it had some really dark... Because I just remembered, you didn't want to fall into dark water.
No, you did not want to fall into dark water.
You don't want to even shove your worst enemy, unless it's Craig Dennis, into dark water.
Now, before you... I will say, before there was one disclaimer.
Sorry, Craig.
It just took me a minute.
I love it when you start reading to me.
Some of the cartoons can go into several of these categories, but we placed them into categories that we thought they fit best. So go ahead, Joe, before we get into our first category.
Because I don't have a lot to add to this episode. Everyone out there in TV land is now screaming. I want to talk about how the 90s killed Saturday morning cartoons.
Just like video.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
Star. I mean, it killed it. Now, the 90s itself did not kill it. But what you nailed one of the reasons why it died, Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
And afternoons. So do you know why Saturday morning cartoons were to begin with?
I blame Saved by the Bell.
No, tell me.
Okay. CW was the last batch. But the 90s were the death of the Saturday morning cartoons. NBC ditched them in 92. CBS was shortly after. In fact, ABC was the one that hung on until the 2004. And I didn't realize that it went that long. But then I went back over to see all the ABC cartoons, and they were the most robust out of those 3.
I knew it was always ABC and Fox.
The CW kept on till October, the weekend of October of 2014, right around the 4th. And they had...
Because that was the kids' WB.
Yeah.
And then it became CW.
Cable streaming and the FCC killed those. Now, cable, that is really the big reason. The FCC began more restricting its rule requiring broadcast networks to provide a minimum of 3 hours of educational programming. Well, what happens when you have you have to do 3 hours and there's only 3 networks, right?
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to give away prime real estate. You're not
Right.
giving away 9 o'clock during the Jackie Gleason show. You're going to give away 3 hours on the Saturday. What, Jackie Gleason?
Yeah,
show?
you did Jackie Gleason for the 2000s.
No, this would have been.
Well, sorry, the 1990s.
50s and the 60s.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
when
I'm
it started.
sorry. I'm
So
sorry.
in the start of Saturday morning cartoons, you're not going to give away Milton Berle's time. You're going to give away the dead 3 hours
When you
on
used
Saturday
to,
morning.
yeah, when you used to air reruns.
And educational had a wide definition.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
The more you know.
Wide definition. You could do that, and you could have a nice little thing at the end. The more you know, and knowing's half the battle, right?
In this episode,
And those weren't even Saturday morning cartoons.
we learned that Cringer should have stuck his tongue into that electrical outlet.
I thought he was going to say something else.
Yeah, no.
Cringer and I both stuck our tongues in way too many places.
Yeah, well, at least he did stick it into Slack Joe McGraw.
It's like John knew what this was about. Networks afraid of messing with the primetime slots found the easiest to cram the required programming into those 3 hours. Alright, with hundreds of cable and satellite channels to choose from, they didn't have to abide by the FCC guidelines anymore. Kids these days can get their animation fix any day of the week. And what did you have when you came home in the afternoon?
You had afternoon
New
cartoons.
cartoons.
You started in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And there was a few. You had G.I. Joe, Transformers. Some of those were syndicated cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Now you had cable. You had satellite. In a few years, you'd have streaming. Nobody saw that coming.
Nobody.
And you didn't have to get up at Saturday morning to be up at what time? 7:30, 8 o'clock if you wanted to watch something really
6
cool in the
a.m.
80s. Really. If you wanted to watch something really cool, or if, let's say it was right around the 1st of September, and you wanted to watch all the new cartoons that were coming on, you were up that morning.
Exactly.
You don't do that now with streaming. You don't do that anymore with anything.
Right.
The 90s started to kill it. Cable killed it.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
It is very sad because the Saturday morning cartoons was what I looked forward to. Even if they were still going on today, as a late 30s man, I would actually wake up Saturday mornings to see these new
And because I
cartoons.
don't have a ton to say on a lot of these, just going to make a few comments because I'm not as big a fan as you all are.
Right.
Right about that time, I discovered, what was it called? Oh, I'll edit it and just say the other sex. And started being interested in other things. Didn't really watch. There's some of these I did watch and I did love. But I was moving away from it, right? I don't have the connection to it that you two do.
Would have been more successful if you just would have stuck with cartoons.
I've been just as successful, let's
Yeah.
be honest with it, right? But, so when we brought up doing 90s cartoons, I was never in a huge hurry other than I thought, well, it's going to be good ratings for us because 80s cartoons was so much. And for that, back to member berries, I enjoyed going through memory lane.
Yeah.
What I realized, in my opinion, as I started researching and going through 90s cartoons, was the 90s may have been one of the best times, if not the best time in history for cartoons.
Yes.
Some of
Agreed.
the best cartoons, well made, great stories were made during the 90s, and I didn't realize it till 3 days ago.
Really?
Didn't occur
No.
to me.
Yeah. No. 90s.
Because I was thinking of all the crap, and in my mind it was like, because I wanted to do other things. I was young, I was angry, I wanted to chase girls, drink, do drugs, things like that. You didn't want to do those things?
Chase girls. Yeah. None of the other stuff. No, not really.
Really?
Really. I'm dead serious.
Ever? Because
Yeah.
I happen to have some first-hand experience with a couple of these with you.
No. Not when I was a teenager. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
When did I meet you? You're 19?
Yeah.
Okay.
So before we get into the 4 categories, there is one outlier to note that I'm going to bring up. In 1990, early 1990s, a very special one-time cartoon came out. This cartoon was financed by McDonald's, Ronald McDonald's Children's Charities, and Chuck E. Cheese.
Mac and me.
Nope. This special was aired simultaneously on all 4 networks and opened with an introduction from President George H.W. Bush and Barbara Bush. There was even a musical number written by the famous Alan Menken and Howard Ashman. They went on to write some cartoons, music for Aladdin, Little Mermaid,
Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast.
Was that
That's a tale that's old as time.
Yes.
Ashman's last movie?
This special was Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue.
Right. Is this the drug one?
This is the drug one.
Yeah, I had it recorded.
Yeah, so did I. And you can still find it on YouTube. It featured many of the big-name cartoon characters who had shows on at the time. Muppet Babies, Garfield, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Smurfs, Looney Tunes, DuckTales, Alf, Winnie the Pooh, to name a few. The plot involved a boy named Michael, a boy who was using marijuana and stealing his father's beer.
We didn't talk about this during the 80s one?
We didn't.
Are you sure?
We briefly mentioned it, but I figured it's 1990, so we got to talk about it here.
And this came out in 90?
1990. March 1990, I believe.
I remember, because there's the scene where the dad goes to I don't remember drinking this many beers. Well, you probably did it during the game, right?
Right. Exactly. The plot involved a boy named Michael.
I'm sorry. No. I'm trying to knock it out so I can do calculus later.
And it is terrible, by the way. This cartoon is terrible.
I haven't seen it in years.
It's bad.
I've got a recorded copy somewhere. Well, I might have. I got rid of the lost.
You can find it on YouTube. When his sister Corey finds her money and her piggy bank missing, her cartoon toys all come to life to find the money and discover the money and drugs in her brother's room.
By the way,
they all work for Lehman Brothers.
Yeah.
Now they're out of work. Alf at 07 or 08 jumping from the. Sorry.
Yeah, it's.
You go with a shotgun sound. That's much better.
But they all.
Willie, boom.
Can't take this anymore.
Hey Willie, bam. Mel Makian brains.
But they all decide to team up to help Michael change his destructive ways and battle the villain Smoke, an anamorphic cloud of marijuana smoke who is controlling Michael.
Huh. Yeah. I remember it. It was a big deal. It really was a big deal.
Yeah, it was. It was huge. I kept the TV guide that had the full 2-page ad in it for
I wish you
years.
had it right now.
I wish I did too, but I threw it away. So we're going to get into our four cartoon waves. Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Episode 1.
So the first wave, superhero cartoons. We are currently in the superhero wave in modern movies. Everybody knows this. This has been completely engulfed the world due to, in large part, large spectacles, advancements in CGI, and they actually take the time to write a compelling story.
And what I wanted to say about that is, what's really interesting to me about this is animation foretold the coming of this, because you could do the superhero stuff like comics did it with animation. You couldn't do it with movies yet.
Yeah, at the time.
Not convincing.
Not like you can now. No, it's not the same.
Right.
I refer you to those Captain America movies where he has a clear shield.
They didn't even, in defense of those movies, they didn't even have a budget for the day.
Yeah.
Much less, something pops over there in the corner. I think the guy that owns dead mothers behind the walls, but everybody gets
Listen,
creeped
Barbara.
Everybody gets creeped out when I tell that story. It's like, oh, goblins, and they run out the door.
If you want your bucket of fish heads come Christmas, you're going to shush up.
But bucket of fish head belongs to Bo Lewis.
But even before,
I thought he got pork chops.
Pork chops. Like Joe McGraw.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, it's fine. But what some people seem to forget, and because with animation, you could do anything with superheroes.
Oh, yeah.
But before the 90s, superhero shows consisted of poorly written and even more poorly animated shows such as Super Friends.
Oh, man. Super Friends, really?
Oh, God. It was terrible.
I love the...
I just about once a month watch Solomon Grundy want pants too.
Super Friends, speaking of which, they also did the Scooby-Doo Batman crossover, which used the same type of anime. One of my favorite scenes in that is Batman is reaching his hands up, and in the particular animation scene, he doesn't have a glove on, and there's a Green Lantern ring.
Yeah.
And they just animated Batman over a stock piece of animation that had to be Green Lantern, and they just went ahead with it.
Oh, God.
And used it in Scooby-Doo. It's true. Watch Scooby-Doo meets Batman, the old one. And
yeah, but you also...
Where are we at on this?
We got a few minutes. But we also talk about Spider-Man and his amazing friends, and a very terrible version of the Fantastic Four that I believe came out in the 70s.
With the robot, Herbie.
Yes.
You couldn't have the Human Torch because kids would just set themselves on fire. Because kids were too dumb to realize that was fiction.
And I believe they put Herbie into the continuity error and continuity.
They did.
Yeah.
He's a lab assistant for Reed.
But so we're going to start off with superhero cartoons with probably the most important one, Batman the Animated Series.
And whom did I get to meet and interview?
I know, I'm jealous of that.
He's a really nice guy. What was his name again?
Kevin Conroy.
That's who I said.
So
he really was, by the way.
Did Batman's voice several times.
Yes.
outside.
He still
of
does
Batman.
Batman.
I will say this before
Guys.
one of the little oh I know he still does
still
for
does
the
Batman for
every
yeah.
now and then for the DC
Yeah,
animated movies.
yeah.
Kevin Conroy was the first to use two different voices to portray Bruce Wayne and Batman. First time that had ever been
He
happened.
talked about it.
And now it's common.
What you need to do is go to Comic Con's website or wherever and watch the interview where I moderate the panel with Mr. Conroy. Thank you for reminding me of his name.
Yeah, you're welcome.
He was really sweet.
But Batman the Animated Series appeared from 1992 to 1995. It was created by Bob Kane, Bill Finger, always Bill Finger.
Though he's uncredited. If you watch the credits,
yeah, no, that's
at this point he still would have been.
Yeah,
uncredited.
he's uncredited. Nobody knew he existed. Eric Radomowski, Bruce Timms, and Paul Dini. The latter two, which they got to be able to pitch this to Fox, in large part because of their success in another cartoon we will be talking about later, Tiny Toons. Episodes directed by, and by the way, I'm only going to mention a few of the writers and creators and directors. I recommend going to IMDb and looking up any of these cartoons and actually looking at the long list of people who made these shows possible. Because this is when animation, where the writers were just, every episode had tons of writers. They had a writer's room for cartoons, for God's sakes. Episodes directed by Kevin Altieri, Boyd Kirkland, Frank Parr, Dan Ribba, Dick Seabass, Bruce Timms,
Kick his ass, Dick Seabass.
Eric Radomowski, and Kent Butterworth. So
I got nothing but pancakes.
So I'm going to name some of the actors. And do you remember when I texted you all? I texted them earlier this week and said I discovered something that I never knew before.
Yes.
It's about this.
Okay.
Kevin Conroy, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. I actually looked how to pronounce that. That's how much I prepared for this.
Good for you. I think we're supposed to do those things, though.
Bob Hastings, Robert Costanzo, Mark Hamill, Richard Mole, Arlene Sorkin, John Vernon, Adrian Barbeau, Brock Peters. This is the big one. Paul Williams.
Oh, who did Paul Williams play?
The Penguin.
Little Enos was the Penguin?
He was the Penguin.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. Blew my mind. The whole and he's one of my favorite parts about Batman the Animated Series. David Warner, Ron Perlman.
Who did David Warner play?
David Warner played, if I'm not mistaken, he played
David Warner is one of my favorite characters.
Ra's al Ghul.
Ah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, Ron Perlman, Roddy McDowall, and John Glover.
Ah, Roddy McDowall, one of the other great B movie.
He was the Mad Hatter, and oh my God, he did such an amazing job as the Mad Hatter.
He also
But you know they let them go wild on that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They let them make those
They
roles.
let them make that.
Yeah. Kevin Conroy talked about that on the comic book panel. I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yeah. But go ahead, James.
Well, also Adam West had a couple appearances.
He played the Grey Ghost.
The Grey Ghost, Simon Trent. Brock Peters.
Yeah, Brock Peters was in it. I mentioned him.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Ron Perlman was Clayface.
Mm-hmm.
So which actually are some of the more, and I think one of the things about Batman, and you may be getting ready to say this, but I think one thing about it was much like with Batman Returns, they took a page from that, and a lot of the villains had some sympathetic storylines. Yes, they were villains, but I think Clayface has a pretty sympathetic.
Clayface, and they also Mr. Freeze.
Yeah,
Mr. Freeze. The story that they created for Mr. Freeze is now what everybody uses. Because before that, Mr. Freeze was just a hack character, just another one of these ice-related characters that DC has a million of.
I didn't know. Well, yeah, but it also gave us one of the greatest villains of all time.
Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
I was waiting for you to say.
No, Harley Quinn
because people forget that came from that.
That is probably one of their two biggest contributions to the continuity of Batman, other than Kevin Conroy's contributions, is the fact that Harley Quinn got created, and also they changed Mr. Freeze's story arc.
Mm-hmm.
Kate Mulgrew also did a voice.
Oh yeah, she was the Red Claw.
Mm-hmm.
She was the Captain Red Claw.
No, it's just Red Claw.
It's actually Captain Red Claw.
It's actually
Captain Janeway Red Claw.
Oh my God, that's probably honestly her story arc is probably my least favorite Batman.
Do you think there's a Star Trekky person? What do they call them again?
Trekkies.
Warzers.
Did you name some of the authors? Because
go for it.
Some of the big name author that worked on this also has a link to. Do you have the poster up?
Maybe. Is it a good movie?
It's Bubba Hotep.
No.
Joe R. Lansdale wrote for Batman the Animated.
Oh, I didn't have that.
That's cool.
I looked at the writers. I didn't see his name come up.
Yeah, he wrote some of the episodes. I don't know the exact ones he wrote, but he did write for Batman the Animated.
We need to get Joe R. Lansdale on board.
I would love to. At least
we haven't really worked on that either.
No, we need to try.
That's the reason why I mentioned it out loud. Now somebody can hold their feet to the fire on it. We've tried so many. Keep going.
No. One of the things I like to mention is the opening. The opening of the show was actually the pilot, the pitch to actually get the show made.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it actually was the pitch. And also, too, you actually never see the title of the show, ever. It's just automatically called Batman the Animated Series. You never see the title for the show.
What?
And people don't... I don't think people realize that the title never shows.
I don't think I knew that either, but you know what it is.
It's just... It ends with the iconic picture of Batman on the rooftop with the lightning strike, which is amazing. I'm going to stop talking about Batman unless you have something other than I'm going to mention some of my personal favorite episodes.
Won 4 Emmy Awards, and...
That's it. Because it is really... Don't you all think that's the gold standard of superhero animated shows?
With the exception, yeah.
What's better?
I go back and forth. I think...
You would know more than I would.
I think if you're a diehard fan, I would counterpoint it that it's definitely the best that DC has ever done.
Yeah.
I think you can counterpoint it if you're a comic fan with the X-Men and Spider-Man because they followed the comics.
Yeah,
I never saw Spider-Man, but I have seen several X-Men. And now Christie's was a huge fan of the cartoon for X-Men.
As was I. But some personal favorite episodes that I'd like to mention are Heart of Ice, which was the premiere of the of Mr. Freeze, Feet of Clay, which was the introduction of Clayface, Two Faces, two-parter, I Am the Night, I Almost Got Them, and The Mechanic, and also It's Never Too Late. And
I Almost Got Him. Is that the card game where they're all
the card game.
I love that one. That is so good.
That's one of my personal favorites.
And that's coming from a guy that doesn't know jack shit. And I knew exactly what you're talking about. It's a good one.
And, it is. It's effective.
Yeah,
it's fun.
And another, It's Never Too Late. I'm going to mention this, and then we got to take a break. It's Never Too Late is actually one of my personal favorites, and it actually rarely see Batman. It's about a mob boss who is being hunted down by another mob boss, and it basically him basically having a crisis of conscience about his choices that he's made, and it all ends on the train tracks with his brother. It's a very heart moving episode. I recommend anybody check it out, and Batman's barely in it.
We could do a whole episode on just Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, we could. I mean, I could.
What you should do on your new podcast about the cartoons.
It'll be called Better Bonehead. Joe ain't here.
Sign me up. I'll subscribe on the YouTubes. I ain't editing the son of a bitch. Feel free to take over, Mississippi boy. Anytime.
I really wish. Well, you need to put in a gag here. This is where James edit, and it just cuts to a white screen going, "Is this on? Is this on?"
No, it cuts to Richard Nixon.
Nixon was known for his superhero antics in the 80s.
So I feel like I've been talking a lot, James. I'm going to let you take over. And I see you're going to bring up one of the ones I had.
I have to, because
you guys are going to do that.
Yeah.
I think
share a brain.
We have to bring up this one because it's our personal...
And a penis.
Honestly...
Which I think is kind of gross.
This is probably my personal favorite of the superhero shows.
But I understand it.
Yeah.
For utility reasons.
Go, James.
Anyway, no.
Someone's head out there just exploded.
One of them that I had to bring up, because it is a superhero show, but it also, parts of it are really, really funny, and it mocks other superheroes, and that's The Tick.
Yep.
Created by Ben Edlund.
Yep.
And Ben Edlund, I didn't realize, I knew he worked on a lot of different things, but I didn't know how influential he was. So a little bit, he created The Tick when he was still in college, and a little bit of the history of The Tick was... It got its television claim to fame because there was this upstart Ninja Turtle show that was made off of an independent comic.
Never heard of it.
And they were looking for other independent comics, and this small New England company contacted him and was like, "Hey, we already got this thing. It's got a fan following a little bit. Why don't we see if we make that into it?" They pitched it to Fox because Fox was doing their new Saturday morning lineup, and Fox, they put together this thing, put a lot of effort into it. Fox turned it down and was like, "No, we'll give you 5 days. Fix it. And we'll give you one more shot." 5 days, very little sleep, and they just basically ground out what became The Tick that we saw on television. So a little bit from The Tick from comics, and I haven't read a lot of them, but the one Tick comic I remember reading before the cartoon ever came out was this entire episode, and it may have been the first issue reprint. I know it wasn't the original one, but He is in an asylum, he breaks out, and the entire comic, he ends up stopping crimes, but He's excited because he finds out that his costume or skin or whatever it is has pockets. And he runs around screaming, I have pockets, and he knocks over villains, and he does stuff like that. And that's what the Tick comic was. The cartoon expanded that character quite a bit. Ben Edlund, though, I mentioned because he went on to work on these little projects like Firefly with Joss Whedon. He worked on Angel as well. Venture Brothers.
You work on Supernatural.
Gotham.
He directed our personal favorite Supernatural episodes. The comedic episodes.
The
of
funny
Supernatural
ones are directed by Ben Edlund. Yep.
He worked on Gotham, and he also was a writer. He was a staff writer. The thing about the Tick cartoon was it had a weird continuity to it. Mm-hmm. In one of the early episodes, Chairface Chippendale,
voiced by the amazing Tony J,
decides that he will carve his...
Tony J?
I thought it was Tony Jaa, but it's Tony J.
I don't know who that is.
You would if you know. Yeah, you would. Anyway, go ahead, James.
His villainous plan was so nobody would ever forget him. Was he would carve his name on the moon.
Yes.
Tick doesn't stop him in time, so there's a CH in the start of an A, and it pops up in the future episodes. So that continuity was established there. What I loved about the show was the over-the-top villains that he had to fight. So he's assigned to the city, and the city's name is the city, and the city is where they basically send...
Oh yeah, he's a good actor.
Every bad superhero ever. So some of the other superhero, and a lot of the ones that are on the cartoon were created for the cartoon. There's an over-the-top Batman parody called Deflator Mouse.
Yeah, which he was the only thing about him was he had an amazing costume. Usually, if there was trouble, he would run away.
Yeah, he was a coward. But he was, if you saw him at the diner, he was always, mopey, and it was very much a commentary on Batman. So you had Deflator Mouse, you had such characters as Sewer Urchin,
which was voiced by Jess Harnell, and Jess Harnell talked like Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man.
Yeah.
That was the Sewer Urchin.
Mickey Dolenz, he had an assistant, or a sidekick, Arthur, who was an accountant, who had a moth suit. Mickey Dolenz voiced him during the first season. Mickey Dolenz then left, and Rob Paulson took that over. But some of the characters that I love Sarcastro. Sarcastro was a villain who was a sarcastic version of Castro. He wore the Castro uniform and was just sarcastic. That was his power. Man-eating cow, because once a cow gets the taste of blood, of human blood, it doesn't go back.
I need to watch more Tick.
You can borrow it.
I've probably never seen more than an episode.
Yeah, I was about to say, I actually have it here. I meant to get it out. But anyway.
Show it to all our listeners.
Let me get that off the show. Jim Cummings.
Wave at him again, W.
Jim Cummings did a lot of the voices for it as well. Oh, there it is. Look. Jim Cummings.
For you people listening, I was listening to our last episode as I was putting it together, and Chad going, for you all listening, James is waving at you.
Mark Hamill did voices for this as well, by the way.
Yep.
But Garrett Graham did voices. Garrett Graham.
Yeah, the actor who was in Used Cars. He's in Chud too, Bud the Chud. He plays Bud. The Chud.
The Chud, yes.
I'm just letting you all know that he does that. He's also in probably a little movie most of you haven't seen called Phantom of the Paradise.
Yes. Another character that I love, Maurice LaMarche, did a lot of voices for this, including
Never heard of him.
The evil midnight bomber, What Bombs at Midnight.
That's a good title.
That was his name, and he would call in and say, "I'm the evil mad bomber. What bombs at midnight?"
That's great.
He goes. He's putting bombs while the Tick and another hero who has the Tick. The episode's called The Tick versus the Tick. And it's the Tick in a bar, and all of a sudden this guy shows up dressed in a Tick outfit, and he goes by the Tick, and he wants to fight Tick for the name The Tick. And meanwhile, they're having this fight, and the Mad Bomber's going and putting bombs all around it because all the other superheroes are too focused on this fight. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I guess you had to be there.
Shut up.
Now, for you all listening, Chad just did some sort of dance demonstration of how that all
I talk with my hands.
It was beautiful.
But no, so the Tick was...
like I'm doing now.
He's like the bald black swan.
The Tick was a commentary on superhero cartoons, even when superhero cartoons was getting big, but it was also funny in of its own self, and even had a lot of heart to it. There was his battle cry, he had to pick out a battle cry, and he picked Spoon. I was much closer to Arthur because Arthur's battle cry was, not in the face, not in the face!
Yeah.
That's what he tells Dana.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, the Tick was, and they've tried to make it live. They made a Patrick Warburton version, which had big cult following. Amazon's version just got canceled, and Ben Edlund was trying to get it picked up by somebody else. I heard today that so far that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But if you watch, all three versions are very different. Mm-hmm. They all have different supporting casts. They all have different, but the commentary that is in there about superheroes, about how they would actually be viewed, about all these different things. Doesn't matter the iteration that they do. The Tick's a funny character.
Yeah.
So which out of the two live action do you prefer?
Ooh.
Oh, I've been watching.
I tried to watch the Amazon one. I watched the first episode and I didn't care for it.
It took me a while to get into the Amazon one because it takes more time to build.
Yeah.
And I think it was trying to do something more like an actual arc.
Yeah.
Than the Patrick Warburton.
I lost me.
Yeah.
So Joe, it's a show about subtlety. It builds. It builds.
I don't need subtlety. I need a hammer.
He needs Slack Jaw McGraw.
I need Slack Jaw McGraw.
But to jump in on a couple of things about the Tick,
skull, kids.
We should mention that Townsend Coleman was the voice of the Tick. Also, Kay Lenz was a voice. A couple of the villains that you didn't mention, El Seed, which was a mutant sunflower hell-bent on destroying mankind.
I forgot El Seed.
The Bread Master, Pineapple.
Carbs are the enemy.
he created bread bombs.
Yes, I do as well.
The Pineapple Pokepo, the human.
I did that with James's wife.
Joe, the character that Joe could play, the human ton. Sorry, Joe. And
all you got, huh?
Yeah, all I got.
Digging deep, fat jokes.
And the most important, Dinosaur Neil.
Yeah, Dinosaur Neil, who had to be stopped by acetylsalic acid, which I still remember because what do most people know acetylsalic acid as, Chad?
Aspirin.
It's aspirin.
Yeah.
The entire episode, they're like, we've got to find enough acetylsalic acid to stop him, and then finally somebody goes, acetylsalic acid.
And there's actually a point in my time where Arthur breaks the fourth wall and describes what aspirin is. It makes. Yep. But some of my personal favorite episodes, the Tick versus the Tick, as I previously mentioned, the Tick versus the Uncommon Cold, Leonardo da Vinci and the Fighting Genius Time Commandos, Heroes, which was a Cops parody, where they fight the Deadly Bulb, and that Mustache Feeling.
And on that, I won't
lost
make any
that
joke. Mustache feeling. Oh, I've shaved my face.
But anyway, James, would you have any more about the Tick?
There's less tickling, and it's gone.
No, gone. If you've never seen the Tick, you really should pick it up, and I think you can get it now for $8-9. I mean, it's nothing.
Is that the whole series right there?
No. So that's one thing we should mention. You can't get the entire series on DVD.
Why?
You can get the Tick versus Season 1 and the Tick versus Season 2. Those are actually not completed completed versions of the series, and they never finished they never actually released the last season. The reason why. For example, in Season 2, there is one where the Tick fights a character that is very similar to Galactus, the Marvel villain, and there was some copyright and distribution issues, so that never got released.
There's also some that I think did get released where he fights basically a parody of the Punisher.
Yeah.
And those made it, but Galactus was very specific.
And then there's another one where it's the Tick versus the Mole Man, where the Mole Man is actually tracking down. The Mole Man come to destroy the surface world, and the Mole King falls in love with Sidney Crawford because she has a mole. Now Sidney Crawford, there's some issues with Sidney Crawford, and that's why Season 3 pretty much got halted. So no, you can't. But Tick versus Season 1 and Tick versus Season 2, you can still buy. It's worth owning.
But they're not complete.
They're not complete.
There's episodes missing.
There's episodes missing from those, and then we never got Season 3, sadly. And you can't find copies
of
them.
The Muppet Show.
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't you bring that up some more? I've still got hurt feelings about that.
And you mean Muppet Babies or the Muppet Show?
The Muppet Show.
Okay.
They never finished putting out the Muppet Show.
Well, no, and Disney never releases anything, and that's going to bring us to our third
Hopefully
superhero.
Disney Plus eventually, because I actually tagged them today because there's a cartoon I want to see that I'm going to bring up later. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and you can't. Anyway, that's
No.
a whole other bonehead episode
Yeah.
talking about the shit that never got released. Because you
See-
think you have access to everything, and you don't.
you don't.
No, because Disney. Sorry to go off on the tangent, but Disney released the cover art at Disney 23 D23.
It's season 4, right?
Season
We
4, and it
never
was
got
Gonzo, and they had it. It was all done, and then they just stopped it. And it's not like it was the last season either. There were more seasons of the Muppet Show that
Right.
we never got.
So yeah. So
Fix it, Disney.
And so speaking of Disney,
Say
we're
fist it.
That too.
but no, we're so we're
Disney.
I don't know.
Whatever gets me Muppets.
So is
Fist it, Roy!
By the way, that should be the
Like,
name of
no.
this episode. Fisted Disney.
Fist it, Disney, whatever gets me Muppets.
Yeah. So
Hashtag blast.
Hold on, you were saying as I'm texting this to myself,
yeah. So Darkwing Duck,
when there's trouble, you call DW.
which is also another series that has never been completely.
Which is
released.
from who?
But it's a character that is returning.
Yeah, he's returning. It was created by Disney, 1991 and 1992 is when it aired, and it's actually one of the rarities of it's a Disney cartoon that was not based on a previous Disney property.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe the Gummy Bears, which came out in '88.
You know, they're bouncing here and there and
everywhere.
everywhere.
High Adventures.
They're beyond compare.
Yeah. It was created by Tad Stone. By the way, this is something that is very.
I got tad stoned once.
But no, this is something that's very interesting about doing
Then I got
research.
really stoned.
If you go by IMDb, most Disney cartoons don't list the creators.
Well, that's because Roy did it.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Bill Finger got robbed.
I don't know why Disney has a hard time giving the creators credit.
They're also
Nine-
sorry about paying, but keep going.
All 91 episodes were directed by Tad Stone and Alan Zaslov. Voice actors include Jim Cummings, who was the voice of Darkwing Duck, Terrence McGovern, Christine Cavanaugh, who you would know from The Simpsons. Also, Dan Castellaneta was the voice of Megavolt, Rob Paulson, and Tino Insana, who I like to mention just because of my favorite villain in the Darkwing universe, Bushroot. The series was essentially
Stop,
about...
Joe.
Shut it. He was a...
Nip it in the bud.
Nip it in the bud, Joe. The series
Root stifle. Stifle.
Bush.
Root.
And I'm not able to say anything
Stifle.
about the
Eat
Bush
it.
root.
Nope.
Stifle. Eat it.
He's an amazing character. And we actually talked about this previously in the Batman episodes because
So
the
we're gonna play with
Darkwing,
my own Bush root.
Darkwing Duck is ranked as having one of the best rogues galleries, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he has the villains he has are his equal or better.
Yeah. One thing that
Especially
made...
Bush root.
Yeah. Anyway, the series was essentially about an accident-prone superhero battling crime with his sidekick and his daughter. As I mentioned previously, one of the few Disney cartoons that did not involve a pre-existing character. They also cover some pretty deep issues in this cartoon, which is one of the reasons why I like it.
It's
Including,
very special Darkwing.
yeah, well, they covered adoption, the death of a loved one, and even parenting. Like, it was a lot of the episodes was the fact that Darkwing, I got your text message saying fisted Disney. I was like, what the hell's that?
Well, I can't make Bush root jokes according to you two.
Yeah.
But when you get your own Goram podcast about your own cartoons,
let's just hope that title doesn't get us sued.
it'll get us some really good play.
But
What's it going to take? The Stephen King book collection?
As long as they don't touch my Harlan Nelson. Be it, he was fired by Disney. You ain't taking him back.
But no,
How you
they're
doing?
no who me?
No, him.
Oh yeah.
You are going to go on for hours.
But for example, in one of my personal favorite episodes, Dead Duck. It's all about he doesn't wear a helmet while riding his motorcycle. He crashes. He becomes a ghost, and there's a lot of comedy in it. But it also deals with a lot of heartfelt of Goslin Mallard, who is already adopted, who lost her parents.
Gosling Mallard.
Yeah.
Okay. Just keep going, Bush root.
Yeah, and Drake Mallard. That's Darkwing Duck's alter ego.
Well, spoiler alert.
Sorry.
Hashtag blessed.
But no, so there's like where she's lost her parents, her grandfather in previous episodes, and now she's lost Darkwing. Pretty heart gut.
I feel bad for this duck.
Yeah, but
No galoshes, you say.
but yeah, but as we mentioned previously, Darkwing Duck was so memorable not because of just Darkwing, but because of his rogues gallery. He had villains that rivaled those of Batman and Spider-Man. In some cases, they mirrored previous villains, but they were spins on archetypes were creative and humorous, both at the same time. Villains included Megavolt, Bushroot, the Liquidator, which was a kind of a ripoff of what was Spider-Man villain? Waterman or Aquaman? No,
Aquaman.
Not Aquaman.
Now you've got me.
Hydro-Man.
Hydro-Man.
Aquaman
Talks to them
is
fishes.
very sexy, according to what I hear on the internets.
Now,
I'm just saying.
Quackerjack, Steelbeak, and Negaduck.
What's the last one?
Negaduck.
Ah.
It's actually it's a negative universe version of Darkwing Duck. He goes by Negaduck.
Does he have a goatee?
No, instead of a purple outfit, he has a yellow outfit. And instead of a purple cape, he has a black cape.
With a goatee.
No goatee. Ducks can't grow goatees, you silly bastard.
Yeah, they could. And they love sun chips. If I know two things.
Hedberg.
Yeah, Mitch Hedberg.
But no, he also had
Rest in peace in Nakatomi.
He also had an amazing supporting cast of Launchpad McQuack, Goslin, his daughter, Gizmo Duck, Stegmutt, who was a duck turned dinosaur, and Morgana Macabre.
I would love to date someone named that.
Yeah.
Joe Lewis, I'm here for Morgana Macabre.
She had a beehive and she wore a long black dress, kind of like Elvira.
Yeah, that's right up my alley.
Also, she was a duck, you perv.
Does she have a goatee?
Because that's what
Because sometimes that's all it takes to get me going.
Some personal favorite episodes of mine were Life, the Negaverse, and Everything. That's where Darkwing
That is a play on a Douglas Adams book.
Well, there's a lot of this. There's a lot of those in his episodes. Darkwing goes into an alternate universe. He falls into a cake and actually ends up in Negaduck's universe, where Negaduck is basically Darkwing, but he's destroyed the entire universe. And there's a gut-wrenching scene where Goslin is still Goslin in this universe, and she doesn't want him to go. She wants him to stay and be her father, and he promises not to leave until he corrects everything. It's a really good episode. Beauty and the Beat, which was the introduction of Bushroot, Twin Peaks.
Why are you killing me with this Bushroot?
Dead Duck, and hold on, Dry Hard.
If you're going to dry, you better dry hard.
Dry Hard was the introduction of the Liquidator. All right, James, you got any more?
I was going to talk about. No, go ahead, James.
Superhero. Okay, I've got to do this superhero because it was created only for television, and I want to name the voices of the villains.
Okay.
Ed Asner.
Yep.
John Ratzenberger.
Ooh.
Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, I know
Maurice
what you're doing.
LaMarche. Dean Stockwell. Frank Welker. Meg Ryan. Mary Kay Bergman. David Rappaport. Tim Curry.
Okay.
James Coburn. Ed Gilbert. Martin Sheen. Sting. David Warner, and Malcolm McDowell all did the voice of villains in this show. And I refer to, of course,
Captain Planet and the Planeteers.
Exactly.
That's one of your favorites?
No, but it is quintessential 90s hero.
That's true.
Yeah.
We could not end Heroes without bringing up Captain Planet because it is
Turner.
very much well known.
Very much well known sounds redundant.
You're very much stupid faced.
I'm pretty sure you could have said it's very well known.
But Whoopi
or very
Goldberg,
much known well.
LeVar Burton did one of the voices. David Coburn, who also did a voice of
James
the villain.
Coburn? You said David Coburn.
David Coburn did the voice of Captain America. Sorry, James Coburn did.
I thought Sting did the voice of Captain America.
No. Captain Planet. Oh. Captain America reports to him. Anyway.
To Sting?
Yeah. Whoopi Goldberg
The wrestler?
did the voice of Gaia. Do you know who did the voice of Gaia after Whoopi Goldberg left?
No, I didn't know Whoopi Goldberg gave up.
Season 4 through 6, I didn't know it lasted 6 seasons either, was Margot Kidder.
Seriously.
Replaced Whoopi Goldberg. When Whoopi Goldberg went, I'm tired of being Mother Earth. Screw the planet. I got to go do some Star Treks. Margot Kidder came on.
Margot Kidder.
The episodes about this, it did last for 6 seasons. It was made by DIC, the animation company.
That would be, and they say it in the post credits, Dick.
But enough about Joe. Anyway.
Every time I hear that...
By the way, there really is. At the end of the show, they always say the production companies, there is a little kid and a rainbow sound, and the little kid goes, Dick.
Hanna-Barbera took it over in
said shit the other
1993,
day.
the last 3 seasons. But, the show also did some other things. When it started, one of the agreements that was made by Ted Turner was that as the show was made, a percentage of all profits off of merchandise, off of commercial ads, had to go back into education and reforestation. And that funding still exists. They still use it.
Yeah.
We're back. So Captain Planet did that to who?
So
with
Captain
the
Planet
beetroot?
did start...
Bushroot, you jackass.
Captain Planet
Well,
did...
no offense, I would rather beat mine.
No.
Really?
Tons of
With the
offense.
bush.
Okay.
Anyway, Captain Planet did do that.
Wake up.
As of
Before you go.
2017, that organization is still around. The board's still around. There's 2 episodes, though, that were very, very important.
What were they?
One was called Mind Pollution, which was about
Drugs.
About the drug Bliss.
Did you restart the counter, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
About Bliss as a drug and what that means. The other one, though, was the first Captain Planet and the Planeteers was the first cartoon to take on the AIDS crisis.
Did it win?
It did okay.
Is that horrible? Is that horrible?
I don't know.
You laughed.
I shouldn't have.
The entire plot to the episode is the villain Scum convinces a little Nate on the nose there, but
Which is that Jeff Goldblum's right character?
Yes.
He was a rat guy.
convinces people that you can spread the disease by casual contact, which a lot of people
Casual content.
which is what this is.
Hey, let's talk about Reader's Digest.
And there's a young man that's infected by HIV, Todd Andrews, voiced by Neil Patrick Harris, who the town all turns on. His mother is voiced by Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, wow.
So this would have been this had been based slightly on Ryan White. Yeah, okay.
So this was the first animated show.
I don't think I've ever actually watched one episode of Captain Planet. I'm sure I have somewhere.
I watched it, yeah.
Deep in
I
my
always thought,
brain.
it
looks so lame.
If you've never seen Captain Planet and the Planeteers, it was global.
Mm-hmm.
You had kids from each area. It actually had to deal with the fact that, communism failed, that the USSR failed, because about season 3, the one that was from the USSR had to go, well, actually, here's where I'm from, and it's all divided up now and all of that
You
stuff.
don't know how lucky you are
What?
to be back in the
USSR.
Ah, damn it.
Oh, I fell into that one. But much like G.I. Joe, much like everything else, at the end of every episode or somewhere within each episode, there was a Planeteer alert clip, which was how you can actually better the world, help the environment, not do drugs, don't walk behind horses, I assume. Something like
Yeah.
If Mask taught me anything,
that.
you never walk behind a horse.
But yes, so there you go.
Kick the shit out of Bebop.
Kwame.
Was that its name?
Wait,
What was
what
the
are
little
you...
robot's name? From
What-
Mask?
Oh, yeah.
Was it Bebop?
Yeah. I
Kick
think.
the shit out of him. Horse
This
was
is
like,
90s,
fuck
not
you,
80s.
Bebop.
By the way,
Dumbass R2 ripoff.
as the show went on, that there was an evil Captain Planet, of course, which was formed by... So the good Captain Planet was formed by Earth, Fire, Wind, Water, and of
elements?
course, Heart.
They ran out of elements.
Hold on, Heart?
Yeah.
Did they just start singing?
No, basically...
Different kind of Heart?
It was the youngest... It was
You
the
know
young-
they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
No, all Hart did was the youngest member
Is
of...
that one song?
Oh, Lord, never mind.
He could work with animals, right?
He could work with
Why
animals.
are you
Yeah.
doing this? He
Because
could
he
work
would do
with
this.
animals.
He would go
Are
hard.
you
Yes.
inseminating them, James?
No. I'm not the one talking about punishing by rude or whatever you were talking. Anyway, the evil versions were
Stupid bush root.
even sillier because they had a hard time coming up with parallels to that. So Duke Nukem had a super radiation ring
Duke Nukem, like from the video game?
that they actually had to change the spelling of Duke Nukem, the video game, briefly until they worked out a deal. Loot and Plunder had the deforestation ring. Hoggish Greedley and Sly Sludge had a smog ring, which was the counterpoint part of Wind. Verminous Scum had Toxic's ring. And of course, Dr. Blight had the Hate ring.
Yeah.
So did Heart do Barracuda?
Did you seriously look up and see what Hart's saying? Is that what you just did? That's what you just did.
Here's the thing. My favorite Heart song, I can never remember the name of it.
You can't remember Barracuda.
Barracuda's not it.
Oh.
It's the shitty one from 91, which goes along with this episode. Who will you run to? Who will you run to when it all falls down?
You're hitting the mic.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, if you were ever wondering if
Good
Captain
as
Planet...
you want me to start playing
Captain
it for you?
Planet has reappeared. Now, there was an episode of OK Go, Let's Be Heroes. If you've never seen that, it's a modern cartoon. But Captain Planet appeared in that recently.
Okay, Go the band?
No. OK Go, Let's Be Heroes. It's a show on the TV.
What about the band?
I don't know if they're heroes or
Do
not.
you know OK Go? That's an actual band.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they don't sing Who Will You Run To?
No.
Or they might do a cover. I don't know.
The fact you had to look
Google! Does OK Go do Heart covers?
Speaking of cover, you're obviously not here for Undercover Lover. So you must be here for
Undercover Barracuda.
Brother.
Anyway, so that's going to wrap up our superheroes.
I mean, there's tons more.
I'm getting ready to list them.
So the Spider-Man and X-Men cartoons we're going to talk about a little bit, but the main thing about that
You guys got to talk about those.
is
Right?
that it really did follow the
Your iPad?
no the cartoon. The cartoon followed the
Is
comic.
that a new iPad?
Yeah.
No, it's not a new iPad. I can't.
Does it
afford
go
that
along with your
nonsense.
iWatch?
I don't have
You
these
bougie
particular ones.
motherfucker.
Hard R episode,
I'm
gentlemen.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
90s cartoons, and we're making this a hard R.
Hold
Not
on.
hard.
Hold
There's
on.
only been 2 or 3.
Hold on. The funny part about it is, it's your mother that gave me all those things for services rendered.
Well, you know who's bougier than you?
But I'll do the Spider-Man cartoon in a little bit of detail. Season 1, literally, you can line them up to comics. They had to change some things, update them for the time. But the first episode, Night of the Lizard, was based on Face to Face with the Lizard, which was the introduction of the Lizard from Amazing Spider-Man number 6. And the story arcs they did in that show, the Spider Slayer series, was from Amazing Spider-Man number 5. And they kept going back to the source material. Which, by the way, is one of the reasons the cartoon was successful, because adults would watch it with their kids because they remembered reading the storylines.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that proves is that, hey, DC Comics and Warner Brothers, go back to the source material.
For you all listening, this has had a couple of F words, and James keeps looking at you, but you can't see him because you're listening.
Well, that was addressed to Warner Brothers. And unless Warner Brothers is listening,
Do you
which
think
case
Warner
hire me.
Brothers subscribes on the YouTube?
God, I hope they do.
All the brothers of Warner.
But
They're
no,
the ones that quit.
you can actually go onto the
Damn Warner
interwebs,
Brothers.
and look up the episodes and see what comics they line up to if you want to go back to the source material. And
I don't think I've ever seen one episode of Spider-Man.
Oh man,
animated.
there's some really great episodes.
it had a lot of crossovers. X-Men did appear in it. Punisher appeared in it. Daredevil appeared in it. I mean, it really did use...
And they also crossed over Iron Man, and Iron Man was actually voiced by Robert Hayes, who was also the voice of the Iron Man in the Iron Man animated show from the 90s, which you know Robert Hayes from Airplane.
And so, you know...
I know him from FM, but yeah, I hear he's in
Yeah.
Airplane.
And Christopher Daniel
2 people
Barnes...
get that joke.
Christopher Daniel Barnes... Ed Asner, by the way, also did voices for this. He was J. Jonah Jameson.
And
so...
the other voice actor I'd like to mention, just because he actually... one of my personal favorite episodes are the episodes with Doc Ock. Doc Ock was actually voiced by Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., who was the voice of Alfred in Batman the Animated Series.
Right.
And Mark Hamill played the closest thing Spider-Man has to the Joker, Hobgoblin.
Why
So
haven't they done a Hobgoblin, Spider-Man and Hobgoblin movie?
Because it's...
there's
think
about 4 different versions.
You think Hobgoblin is Spider-Man's closest version?
Who's
Green
the
Goblin?
Hobgoblin? Who's the Well, no, because I think Green Goblin is more like Hobgoblin. Is it Norman Leeds was the Hobgoblin that got killed?
Yes.
He got his throat slit. Hobgoblin was more for chaos. Like Norman Osborn's Green Goblin is all about I'm going to advance me.
Okay.
And I think the Hobgoblin was I'm just going to hurt people and see what happens.
Yeah, true.
But anyway,
There's
I have
also-
Heart still playing in my head.
There's also Demo Goblin. He wasn't featured in this show, but go ahead.
I had an emo goblin once.
the but it used tons of different characters from tons of different Marvel properties. It crossed over. They did a lot of different things.
They did a lot of different things. You did it again. You're killing time.
You know
it's
what?
word vomit.
Well, it's better than you talking about punishing your root or whatever.
Well, one thing we
You keep bringing up my root.
One thing we should mention about Spider-Man.
I'm sorry I have that effect on you.
One thing we should mention about Spider-Man, the animated series, is how it ended, which was really, really badly. Fox canceled the show.
Yeah. Why?
Low
Numbers, money.
I'm assuming it was low ratings. Two things that they did that they ruined. One, the final episode is him flying through the air with Stan Lee. Talking about, and it's a weird conversation because Stan Lee, it's actually talking about how he created Spider-Man. Very weird. But the other thing that really pissed off a lot of fans of the show is earlier in that season, Mary Jane gets thrown into a portal by Green Goblin and disappears. And it's an ongoing story arc about where Mary Jane is. And they never resolve it. So as far as in the Spider-Man animated series universe, Mary Jane is just gone.
So a little bit about, and we can kind of see what was going on with the movies coming up and things like that. As far as the ratings go, the ratings actually were pretty strong still. Allegedly, it was because Avi Arad got into a disagreement with the head of Fox Animation at the time, Margaret Loesch, and that is what forced the show to be canceled. Oh. They could not come to terms with where Spider-Man should go next, and if you think about the timeline, this would have been the time when a lot of the live-action stuff was starting to gear up, those conversations, and Sony was the one that was going to make that, and so Avi Arad, I know we talk a lot about, who is it now? Who's the one doing
Kevin Feige.
Kevin Feige.
We think about him, but Avi Arad.
I don't know why I know, but
Avi Arad did a lot to get Marvel where it is now.
Yes,
that's true, but he's considered a bastard by a lot of people.
He may be.
Ole Sassoon.
He may be, and I won't debate that. But
you're both right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would it have happened without him? I don't know. Probably. I mean, it happens. You know, life finds a way.
Finds a way. But so that was part of what it was, and if you think about the timeline, they were probably figuring out, okay, Fox has got this animated show. Disney now owns it, obviously, which all of this got summed up because Disney bought everything. Interestingly enough, Christopher Daniel Barnes did the voice of Peter Parker in Spider-Man. You would know him as the son of Starman on the Starman television show, spun off of John Carpenter.
I watch it all the time.
He is also Prince Eric from The Little Mermaid. That being said, he is still linked to Spider-Man. In the Spider-Man video game universe, he has done both Spider-Man 2099 for Spider-Man Edge of Time, and he has done, he was Spider-Man Noir for Spider-Man Shattered Dimension, both games. In Marvel Heroes video games, he has done Superior Spider-Man, which is Dr. Octopus taking the place of Spider-Man, and the Symbiote. And in Spider-Man Unlimited, the other animated series that we don't talk about much, he was Electro and Vulture. Okay. So he has maintained a connection to that. So that legacy still lives on, but I have a lot of fond memories of that, including the weird techno song at the beginning.
Yeah, Spider-Man. But we'll briefly mention X-Men because it should be mentioned.
That is some people's favorite, one of their favorites.
Yeah, it is one of their favorites.
Specifically if you're talking about Marvel, right? Right. Some people would consider that the gold standard of Marvel cartoons.
And X-Men, if you don't know about the X-Men cartoon, it was
I'm more familiar with it than the several.
But it was not the original one.
No.
The original one was done in the late 80s, I believe. It was a pilot that was done, and I own it on VHS. I don't know if it's ever been released on DVD.
I've never seen it.
But it was called X-Men, Pride of the X-Men. It had different casts than what we finally saw that made it. Kitty Pryde was how we got introduced to the world of X-Men. We kind of followed her. So if you just know X-Men from the movies, she was basically the Wolverine that brought us into the world, that character type. But she gets brought in by Professor X, and the cast is Nightcrawler, Colossus, Wolverine, and Wolverine is Australian for some reason.
That's interesting.
It's kind of funny because he would be played by
in Australia.
But so it was a pilot that didn't get picked up and got reworked over several times. But if you've never seen Pride of the X-Men, A lot of the roots are there, so to speak. So the Pride of the X-Men pilot was originally done in, I just covered for 1989. Dazzler and Cyclops were the other two. And it was about Magneto and the League of Evil Mutants and all of that stuff coming. The pilot actually came, Joe, you might find this interesting, by them taking money out of the RoboCop animated series to get this pilot launched. So, I guess the X-Men cartoon owned its origins a little bit.
Do you have the copy of the RoboCop animated series?
No.
But it was also narrated by...
It'd be much cooler if you did.
It was narrated by Stan Lee, which was a continuation. He had done narration for Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Obviously, by the time the other X-Men came about, that had died. But yes, so they aired it in 1989.
This is an 89 cartoon. Why aren't you talking about the 90s one?
Because this is what got the 90s one made. They aired in 89, and they just aired it because they never actually picked it up. But they paid for the pilot, so they aired the pilot.
Yeah.
And they would air it occasionally at 6:30, 7:30 in the morning. And that's actually the first time I saw it. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then it never... And I found that they did release an official VHS copy. I bought it. But it eventually led to the one that we're going to talk about now. Go ahead, Chip.
No, I mean, I don't have a lot to say about the X-Men cartoon other than it really was impactful. They told stories that lasted an entire damn season, which was never done before.
They did the Dark Phoenix, right?
They did the Dark Phoenix, but that was way before, way later. They told the Sentinel story from the beginning. I mean, the pilot episode, you see a superhero die violently.
Yeah,
that would be
Morph. Right?
Morph,
which was created for the
show.
But kind of based on who was the X-Men character that was a human that was given mutant powers by a serum?
Captain America?
No, he had the ability to mimic. Mimic! It was Mimic. And so Mimic was a character that they could have used, but for some reason they decided to create Morph. And Morph has since made his way into the comics.
The regular continuity. Yeah, but the two things that really bugged me about the X-Men animated series was my two favorite characters, Colossus and Nightcrawler, were rarely featured. They were just guest spots in like a handful of episodes. But no, I mean, it was... The X-Men episode, the X-Men cartoon was pretty revolutionary for the time because no cartoon had ever been on that told a story other than Japanese animation. Mm-hmm. Japanese animation was the only people doing that at the time. They were telling animation. They told a story from episode 1 and then ended at the end of the season, and then they pick up a new story arc the next season. So, I mean,
and tying this back, the way this ended up getting made was Margaret Loesch, who we just mentioned for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
She became head of animation for Fox and Fox Children's Network in 1991. She was the one that championed them to take some of the money from RoboCop to put it into X-Men because she thought it would be a good cartoon. So when she became in control, she went back and pulled out what they did in '89 and said, we need to do this. So.
Okay. So we're gonna... let's briefly talk about some other superhero cartoons because actually the truth is I found 32 superhero cartoons from the 90s.
Give me some of the obscure ones.
Okay. Well, there's
go.
There's Iron Man, Fantastic Four, Wildcats, The Silver Surfer, Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, which actually premiered in 1999. The Avengers actually had a superhero cartoon briefly where neither Captain America, Iron Man, or Thor, or the Hulk were featured. The leader was Vision, and all the characters had gigantic robot suits. So it featured Hawkeye in a robot suit, Ant-Man and the Wasp in a robot suit. Very weird. The Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack, The Max, Mummies Alive, which was one of my personal favorites, Mighty Max, another one of my personal favorites that you cannot get on DVD. Somebody please get that on DVD. Toxic Crusaders, Street Sharks, Biker Mice from Mars, Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, The Mask, based on the Jim Carrey cartoon, King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, Hammerman. Do you want to guess what Hammerman was?
He was a screwdriver.
Nope, this was the MC Hammer animated show where he had magic shoes.
I was going to say, I thought about that one.
Yeah.
I didn't bring it up because I have taste, but whatever.
Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa.
I do remember that because there's one where the villain dresses up as a school marm.
Yep.
And the big tough guy wants to protect her, but it turns out it's a villain in disguise.
Extreme Dinosaurs, Road Rovers, SWAT Cats, The Mighty Ducks, and I saved this one for last because it is a personal favorite of mine that you cannot find anywhere. Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys.
Not to be confused with Space Monkeys, who have a song, or that is a song on the Fight Club soundtrack. Look it up.
James, do you know anything about Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys?
Chad, I can honestly say no. I don't. I missed that one.
Don't look at me.
Listen to the cast. Jerry Doyle, Maurice LaMarche, Dom Herrera, James Avery, Michael Dorn.
The comedian Dom Herrera?
Dom Herrera. Michael Dorn, Malcolm McDowell, Renee Auberjonois, David Warner again.
By the way, Maurice LaMarche has came up in almost everything we've talked about.
And he will continue to be
never
brought up.
Stopped.
Frank Welker and Maurice LaMarche are just everywhere.
And
never
Rob
stops
Paulson.
popping. Yeah, Rob Paulson.
And finally, Andrea Thompson. So pretty much all the cast from 90s sci-fi, Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, are all featured in this cartoon.
Yeah.
It was basically about a group of monkeys who were sent into space who developed sentience from being in space, and they flew around and on numerous space adventures. They had an orangutan who had split personality disorder. They had a gorilla who was kind of like their Hulk. He would rage out. And it was just a really great episode that didn't last very long, but it was a personal favorite of mine, along with Mighty Max and Mummies Alive, which we could talk about in depth, but we're going to go switch on to a new...
Hold on one second.
Well, I'm going to call an audible and say we've been going over an hour with this one.
Yes.
How long?
We've been over an hour at this point.
Well over an hour.
So we're going to do part 2.
Probably should do part 2 and see where that goes, and then we'll call this part 1. And that's probably not a bad thing because superhero cartoons were huge
in the 90s. So
yeah.
Hold on one quick. You brought up Space Simians.
I can't believe I forgot that one.
You brought up Space Simians. It made me think about one of mine, and I had the video game for this. Captain Bucky O'Hare. He goes where no ordinary rabbit would dare. So this was actually a internationally produced. United States and France worked together on this. It was a Marvel production. It was based on the cult comic Bucky O'Hare. Premiered originally in the UK and then eventually aired in the US as well. But it takes place in a parallel universe called the Aniverse, where animals develop instead of humans. And Bucky O'Hare is a green rabbit, who captains a space frigate named, and I love the name of this ship, the Righteous Indignation. I've used that actually out loud several times.
That's what you call the Kia.
And nobody... what I love about it is I remember this fondly because I had the video game. The video game was a lot of fun. But nobody remembers the Righteous Indignation. So I'll throw it out to people. I'm like, well, we got to go to the Righteous Indignation. And they're thinking, he's passionate about a cause. Nope. Making an allusion to a cartoon nobody remembers. Jenny was first mate and pilot, who was a cat. Bruce...
She was not from the block.
Bruce was a Beetlejuice berserker baboon. So he was a strong man. Deadeye Duck was from this as well. And they had to go around basically doing adventures. It basically was...
They were beyond compare?
Yes, that's what it was. It was Captain Bucky O'Hare. He goes nowhere ordinary rabbit would dare. The villains include Al Negator, who was an alligator. Evolved.
Huh.
But yes.
This gets better every second, James.
If he got Captain Simeon, Captain Bucky O'Hare. It was a cult comic, though, and it had a following, and I remember the cartoon came out. I remember I liked the comic, but I don't remember the cartoon. I don't remember the cartoon half as well as I do the video game, because it was a shooter, a side-scrolling shooter, and you got to pick different characters to play. So, if you've never seen it, though, at least check out the intro to Captain Bucky O'Hare.
Is there any shitty superhero cartoon that you have left off your list? That
I'm sure there is.
Before we end, there is 2 that I didn't put on my list.
I knew it.
There are 2 that I didn't put on my list that I actually thought of when we sit down for the count. There is Sherlock Holmes in the 21st century. Where
Was that 90s?
That was 90s, where
I did not
Sherlock
know.
Holmes teamed up with a disembodied head of Watson, who was in a robot, to solve crimes
This
in the
sounds
future.
like an episode of Futurama.
Yeah, and then also the Phantom had a futuristic episode as well.
I was going to say, well, there was Phantom, and then what was the one where they were all together? Was that 2000s?
No,
Champions of the Universe?
Champions of the Universe. I'm pretty sure that might have been the 90s.
Because that was the Phantom.
The Phantom.
It basically was everybody that was owned by this one company. They were like, screw it, we're going to put it in.
Mandrake, the Mandrake, the
Yep.
Magician, the Phantom,
But anyway.
Flash Gordon.
And they were all in one.
So yeah, they
Flash!
That's all I had to add to that.
So on that note, I guess we're going to wrap up.
On that note,
and then tune in next week for 90s cartoon.
we'll keep on going with Kenny with 90s cartoons.
Ah.